58a, right in the middle. So we had this prohibition about an offering that the part of it is consumed, that part that's consumed by the human, and you put it up on the altar. The answer was no. So now, what about something which is supposed to be fully put on the fully consumed? So what if that goes on the altar? So, Rami Merchama may Rav Chisda. Rami Merchama asked Rav Chisda the following: Hamala mi basar chatas ha'ok. A bird sin offering gets only in all so maybe Shmokor, as long it's still name sin offering in general is something that goes up on the altar, even though this particular one gets consumed fully by the Kohanim, but it's still called a korban chatas, and a korban chatas is still something which is brought up on the altar. So maybe you'll say it is included in the prohibition. So Amar Le, so he took back Kol Shmo korban, v'hainam korban. Yeah, he said, listen, anything which is called a korban, this is called a korban, and therefore I think it should be included in the prohibition. The Gemara says, this actually is a debate from earlier, Ketanai, like the Tanaim debated. Rabbi Eliezer says anything which practically, look at this offering. Does any part of this be brought up on the altar? If yes, other part cannot be brought on the altar. Rabbi Akiva says as long as it's a name of a korban which is brought up on the altar, so that's enough to teach us that even this kind of korban sacrifice, even though it technically is not going to be brought on the altar, but if you were to put it on the altar, include it in a prohibition. Now, what's the difference between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva? So two differences. Amr of Chisda basar chatas ha'ok, our case, of the meat of a bird sin offering, which gets fully eaten by the Kohanim. That would be one difference. If you put that up on the altar, are you including the violation or not? That would be a debate, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Eliezer. Alternatively, Rav Amar lug shemen shel mitzora. So the volume of oil, the amount of oil for a mitzora, which not go on the altar, it goes on the mitzora. So that gets applied on the mitzora at the end of his tzara'as period. So that's something which is not brought on the altar, but it's still called a korban, as we're going to see right now. The Tani Levi, kol korbanam l'rabos luk shemen shel mitzora. The verse says kol korbanam. In this verse, it's talking about other sacrifices. The word kol is extra, and that it includes this amount of oil which is applied to the mitzora. So we see that in the verse talking about sacrifices that are holy. So it says kol, and it includes this oil applied to the mitzora. So this is another example of something which is not applied on the altar, but it's still called the korban. So that's going to be the debate. Anything which is not applied on the altar, but is still called a korban, if you go and put it on the altar, is that a violation, yes or no? So, okay, so that's two opinions, and these are the two at least two differences between them. So now, we had this earlier, Tana Rabbanan Se'or, something which is leavened, it cannot be, you can't make it chametz. And the verse says, Ki kol se'or v'cholash lo taktir manu ishal Hashem. You can't make it leavened, and you can't make it sweet. Okay, so that was the prohibition earlier that we had, that things can't be leavened, and you can't add honey to things, you can't add sweetness to them. Okay, so now ainli elakulo. I understand if it's fully leavened, or better said, if the whole thing part that's leavened is brought up, it's a problem. However, ainli elakulo miksaso minayin. how do I know that even if I offer part of what's leavened on the altar, that's also going to be a prohibition? That we say, Talmud Lomar, kol. It says kol. So the word kol includes not only if you offer up the whole thing, which is leavened, but even part of it is going to be included. We'll see what whole and part is in a second. So ayin, let's say you mixed some of the chametz, that some of the offering that you leavened, that got leavened, that became chametz. You mixed it with, Rash says, with matzah, like you mix it together, the leavened part and the not leavened part. So you have dough and you put water and it rose a little bit, and then you took that and mixed it with dough that has not rose, and therefore you mix it together. So it's not really recognizable that in this offering there's chametz. How do I know that even that is included in the prohibition? Now we say, Talmud Lomar, ki kol. That word ki, extra word, includes even the mixture. So you have the whole thing which is leavened offered up, you have part of it that's offered up, and you have, even if it's mixed together with matzah and it's not so recognizable that there's chametz here, that's still going to be the violation. Okay, now let's go back and analyze. Mai kamar, what exactly is all and part? Amar Abai, haki kamar, this is what it means. Seor bal taktiru, you can't offer up leavened flour offerings. Ainli ela kizayis. So what did it mean? It didn't mean the entire loaf or the entire wafer or the entire. It meant a kizayis, an olive's worth. That's prohibited. Chetzi zayis minayin. Chetzi zayis. What about half of a olive offering? How do I know it's prohibited? Talmud Lomar. That we learn kol. A ruva minayin. Mix it together now. A kizayis with a non-kizayis with a kizayis of chametz with like, let's say kizayis or of matzah, you not leavened dough. A ruva minayin. Or kikol. The actual word kikol teaches you that even if it's mixed together, that all Abaye's interpretation of all means and what part means. All means a kizayis, and raw as so or baltak mates chatzi kometz minayin. Rava says that it's really when it says you from what's left, scoop it. So the part scooped up, Cohen scoops up, so that can't be leavened. If that scoop is leavened, bring it up on the altar, is a problem. But see, kometz minayin. How do I know half of that measure? Which we'll see what that is in a second. Half of that, how do I know it's a prohibition? Talmud Lomar, kol. That even of the measurement of a right is going to be prohibited. A minayin. How do I know? They prove that if it's mixed together, leavened dough and not leavened dough is mixed together, that's also prohibited. Talmud Lomar kikol. The extra word kikol teaches you that even if it's mixed together. Okay, so Abaye and Rava have two interpretations: what all and what part means. Either an olive's worth, or half an olive's worth, or a komet's worth and half a komet's worth. So what is behind their debate? B'mai kamiflagi, what's behind their debate? Abaye who says that the whole thing, all means a kazayas, an olive's worth, and part means less than an olive's worth. Why does he say that? Because he says yesh kometz pachos mishnei zeisim, that there is a kometz which could be less than 2 olives worth. So a kometz is not limited to 2 olives worth. It could even be less than that. So therefore, Abai says that since a kometz could be less than that, so therefore, even an olive's worth, which would be enough for a kometz, would be included in the prohibition. That's what it means all. So yesh, that's because he holds yesh kometz pachos, because he holds that when a kohen does the kmitza, he can do it with less than 2 olives worth, and that still counts. So even less than 2 olives worth is considered like the whole amount. Therefore, he interprets the whole as only a kazayis and not two kazayisim. Next page. And he holds v'yesh haktara pechusa mikazayis. And he says that you can have an offering up on the altar which is less than a kazayis. So therefore, the word kol that includes even part of this offering could even be less than a kazayis, since he holds you can offer up less than a kazayis on the altar. That's Abaye. The reason why Rava said it's a kometz amount is more than a kazayis. It's two kazesim. It's 2 olives worth. So Rava Amar ein kometz pakos b'shnei zesim. You cannot offer up a kmitza less than 2 olives worth. So therefore, that's what the verse number said. All, if it's leavened, if the whole thing is what the whole thing is leavened, 2 olives worth, because that's the minimal amount that you can offer up on the altar. And the ein haktara pechusa mikazayis, when the verse included even less than the whole amount, it can only include something which is at least an olive's worth, because Rava said you can't offer less than an olive's worth on the altar. So depending on what you hold, the minimal amount of kmitza is will determine how you interpret the verse. According to Abaye, a kazayis is you can offer up a kmitza can be a kazayis, and the minimum amount offered up could be even less than that. That's how he interprets the verse. And according to Rava, the minimal amount is 2 kazesim, and that is for kmitza, and the minimal amount offered on the altar is only 1 kazayis, 1 olive's worth, and therefore he interprets the verse that way. Okay, so that's that. Now back to offering things that are prohibited. What if you have something that is leavened and sweetened? So you can't do leavened. You can't do. What if it's mixed together? You took some of the flour offering, and you leavened it, and you sweetened it, and now you offered it up. So how many prohibitions is that? So itmar hamal emisor umidvash al gabe hamizbeach amar Rava loka mishum so veloka mishum dvash. Your dash is for seor, for putting something leavened on the altar. Veloka mishum dvash, and you're going to violate the prohibition of putting something sweetened on the altar. Loke mishum iruvo seor. You took the leavened one and you mixed it together, and that's a violation. That's another violation. Umishum iruve dvash, and took the sweetened and you mix that together. Another violation, 4 violations. So according to Rav, it's 4 sets of lashes. Yeah, it's gonna hurt. So Abaye Amar, no, Ein Lokin Alav Shebeklalos. We have many times with lashes a number of exceptions where you have a negative prohibition that you won't get lashes. Right? We have in Makos a negative violation that has no act. We had a negative violation that a positive occasion is attached to it, like no sar. If you leave it overnight, it's a negative violation, but then you could burn it, and that'll rectify your act. Another one of those, when you have a negative prohibition that has a lot of prohibitions under it, so it's called alav shebechlalos. It's a lav which has many negative prohibitions with it. So in this case, it says it's one verse that says you can't offer anything leavened. In that one verse, we had kol. We had even half of it. It can't be sweetened. It can't be mixed together. So in one verse, you have a number of negative prohibitions. So Abaye says that's called a lav shebechlalos, and it's a lav that has many prohibitions in one negative prohibition. On that, one does not get lashes. So now, on that statement of Abaye, there's 2 opinions. 1 second. How far down was he going? So you won't get 4 sets of lashes, fine, but you really get nothing. That's what I would have thought, that you just get nothing because of this rule. But Ikeda Amri Chada Mihalaki. Some say at the end of the day, you'll still get lashes because you did offer something leavened, and you still offered something which is sweet. So for each one of those, you will get lashes, meaning you would have to. You read the verse that when it says you can't make chametz and you can't make dvash, right? You can't bring them up on the altar. that you can't bring them up goes on each the verse separately. You can't put up sweet. That's two sets. That's like two different violations. The parts that are mixed together, that you're not going to get lashes. So that's really considered one, not two. Fine. That's one opinion. The Ikad Amri Chadanami Lo Lucky. At the end of the day, you won't even get one set of lashes because the Holo Miyached Lave Kilav Chasim. The quintessential negative prohibition is muzzling the animal while it's in the threshing floor. It's going to go graze. You can't muzzle it. So, and right next to that verse, it says you get lashes. So that becomes the teacher for all negative violations of when you get lashes and when you don't get lashes. Over there was just one negative prohibition. That's it. Cannot muzzle the animal while it's in the field. So there you don't have anything more than one violation. So this opinion holds. In our verse, you have 4 violations or even 2 violations. So that's already not similar to that negative prohibition of muzzling. And since it's not similar to that negative prohibition, therefore everything is patterned after that negative prohibition in terms of do you get lashes or not. That's a negative prohibition that has an act. That's a negative prohibition that has nothing to rectify it. That's also a negative prohibition that only contains negative prohibition. So therefore, in our case, we have a number of prohibitions in this negative prohibition. Therefore, it's not. And 4, you are going to receive any lashes whatsoever. Okay. 59a. Says the Mishnah. Continuing our flower offering journey. So it says a number of offerings mentioned. So some yeshu and some you gotta some have frankincense. Yeshu shemen lo levona. Some only oil and don't have frankincense. Levona shemen have frankincense and not oil. Lo levona below shemen. Some sense and don't have any oil. All 4 possibilities, both one or the other, or neither. Now, which are which? Let's see. The elut ulevona. The following require both oil and frankincense. Okay. Hasolas, a offering with part. Saying that in when we're reading the we have to read it. Review so I think that's different. I think the frying pan is these are and frankincense. Vilos, we have like a challah that's thicker. How that's wafers. Okay, I don't know what happened. Sorry about that. So, continuing in the Mishnah. So, we have the frying pan, and we have the challah, and we have the wafers. Then you have Then you have the mincha of the Kohanim. So Rashi just points out something interesting. Rashi just points out that by the challah or the wafers. So let's say you want to say, it's upon me to bring. I'm going to bring. You're going to voluntarily bring a baked flour offering. So there you could bring either a challah, which is baked, like we have challahs, or thinner, or it's baked much thinner, or rekikin. So because you can really bring either one, either challah or rekikin. Okay, or wafers. Minchas Kohanim is a mincha brought by the Kohanim. So let's say a Kohen decides to offer one of these five kinds of flour offerings: fried, deeper fried, loaves, wafers. He can do that. If he does that, it needs oil and frankincense. Minchas Kohen Mashiach, the mincha of the Kohen, the anointed Kohen. He brings, I think this is referring to his daily offering, or it's referring to only when he gets anointed. I think it's his daily offering, no? It's called the Minchas Chavitin.
The anointed Kohen is the Kohen Gadol. The Mishnah is thus referring to the
daily
Chavitin.
Chavitin, yeah.
Twice daily.
Twice daily, yeah, good. It's the Kohen Gadol's. Thank you. It's the Kohen Gadol's offering that's offered twice daily. Minchas Oved Kochavim, the mincha of an idol worshiper, or really it means a non-Jew. Here you see the words are interchangeable. A non-Jew can also bring an offering. I think he can only bring an ola offering, a fully consumed offering, I believe. Yeah, some saying change it to guy, a non-Jew versus an idol worshiper. Interesting. So we'll see. Yeah, so apparently he can also offer, I guess according to some opinions, our Mishnah, he can also offer a flour offering. If he does, it has to have oil and frankincense. And minchas nashim, and a woman who wants to offer flour offering can do so as well. If she does, it's going to need oil and frankincense. And coming up soon, minchas omer. You want to bring the omer offering that we bring on second day of Pesach, that also is going to require oil and frankincense. Minchas nisachim, we have a special category of flour offerings that are called the libation offerings, the flour libation offerings that you're going to bring with another animal offering. You're going to bring it. It won't just be flour; it'll bring with wine. So minchas nisachim, you only do with oil, only to neshama, ain't to the levona, no frankincense. Lechem aponim, that weekly bread, is tone that we know is tone levona. You have the two little bowls with the frankincense inside. So the ain tone shemen, no oil. So that's frankincense and no oil, and oil and no frankincense. So now we have where you bring neither. And this we mentioned at one point, shtei alechem, so the two breads you bring on Shavuos, or the minchas chote, the sinner's sin offering, flour offering, uminchas kinaos, or the sota's one, ein te'un and lo shem v'lo levona. There you don't bring any oil and you don't bring any frankincense. Yeah, I'll take this with an oil, with a frankincense. That's funny. Yeah. So Amar of Papa says of Papa, Kol heicha d'tanan eser. Kol heicha d'tanan eser tanan. It's a cryptic statement. Whenever the Mishnah states, it states 10. So what 10 are we talking about? So I think there are two opinions here. Exactly. So I think simply understood is that let's see. It says 10. We'll see in a second. Lafuke come to exclude the opinion of Rabbi Shimon the Amar mechze chalos or mechze rekikin yavi kamash lon delo. Meaning, so I think simply understood the easiest one is that when you want to bring a voluntarily challah offering, so then you either have to bring 10 chalos or 10 wafer-like, either 10 loaves or 10 wafer-like, but they have to be all 10. You can't split it. That's coming to exclude the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, who says you can bring 5 and 5. So this whole deal, and that's one explanation. Right. The other explanation is that when we list the Mishnah, we have 10 flour offerings here, right? So we have the We have the Machabas, Marcheshes, Chalos, Rakikin, Minchas Kohanim, Minchas Kohen Mashiach, Minchas Ori Kochavim, Minchas Nashim, Minchas HaOmer. So we have only 9. Which one's the 10th one? 1 second. It's Omer. Yeah, we have here 10. Yeah, sorry, the Minchas Solar. That's why we have 10 offerings here. So whenever we have this list, we teach 10. According to Rabbi Shimon, it will really be 11 taught. Why? Because when you want to bring the voluntary offerings, the challah or the rekikin, we only have 2 categories. Either you're going to bring 10 loaves or you're going to bring 10 wafers. According to Rabbi Shimon, you have really a third category. You can bring 10 loaves, 10 wafers, or 5 and 5. So either it's just telling us that you cannot bring 5 and 5, or it's telling you more stylistically, our mission, when it lists this, it only lists 10 and not 11, to teach you really the same thing, that when it's a voluntary loaf, when it's a voluntary baked offering, you only have 2 options, either 10 challahs or 10 wafers. Rabbi Shimon would hold you have 3 options, 10 challahs, 10 wafers, or 5 and 5. Okay. Tana Rabbanan says the brisa v'nesatal aleh shemen v'lo al lechem aponim shemen. So you can put on it oil. So what's on it? So when you bring this offering, so this is referring to the first grains, yeah. So it says on that you put shemen. So only on that, as opposed to below alechem aponim, but you don't put on the bread, on the weekly bread, that you don't put any oil on that. So says the Gemara, why would you have thought that you do put oil on the bread to then need a exclusion to exclude the oil? What's the reason for that? Sheyachol, you would have thought the halo dinu that logically minchas nesachim, just like a mincha of a libation offering, she'ena to a shemen, there's no frankincense, which is a leniency, but there's a stringency that it has to have oil. Lechem aponim sheton levona, lechem aponim, which requires the frankincense, should for sure require the shemen. It should for sure require the oil. It seems from here that the oil is much more essential to the frankincense. But if you have frankincense, you for sure have oil. I think the reasoning could be that the oil becomes part and parcel with the flour offering. You mix it in. The frankincense is never mixed in. It's always brought from the outside. You have frankincense, it's in a little bowl on the loaves. It's not part of the flour offering. It's less essential, more from the outside. So Talmud Lomar Aleha. That we teach you, no, Allah, only on the first grain, that sacrifice you're going to bring oil, Allah shemen, v'lo lechem aponim shemen, but not on the lechem aponim shemen. You don't bring on lechem aponim any oil. Then it says, v'samta aleha livona, v'samta aleha livona. It says there, you're also going to put frankincense on it. So what is that coming to exclude? Aleha livona, v'lo al minchas nesakim livona, only on this frankincense and not on a mincha libation offering frankincense. Why would you have thought that a flour offering brought with the libations would require frankincense to then necessitate this verse excluding it from frankincense? Sheyachol, you would have thought about dinhu uma lechem aponim she'eino ton shemen lechem aponim, that does not require oil, and yet toon livona, it requires frankincense. So minchas nesachim, the flour offering, the libation one, sheteuna shemen, which does require oil, eino din sheteuna levona. So for sure, if it requires oil, it should for sure require frankincense. Talmud Lomer aleha levona v'lo minchas nesachim levona, should be on it levona and not on the flour offering with the libations. For that, you would not bring frankincense. Okay, continuing to expound the verse. Mincha, it says, this is considered a mincha. So mincha, what's it coming to include? Mincha l'rabos, minchas shemini la levona. When they would inaugurate the temple on the 8th day, they would bring a sacrifice. And they were telling you that sacrifice would need frankincense, Mincha. So this is a mincha. What's that coming to exclude? Lahoti shtei alechem, the two breads you bring on Shavuos. Shelo yitanu lo shemen, lo levona. That does not require not oil, and not frankincense. Okay, back to what we just said. Amar Mar, Allah Hashem upanim shemen. It says only here by the first grain. You're gonna have oil and not on the bread, the weekly bread. That, but not on the bread. You would not require oil. Okay, below lechem upanim shemen. Fine. Now we're gonna say, why is that what's excluded? Maybe say something else. Ema aleha shemen below al minchas kohanim shemen. Maybe it's coming to exclude the voluntary flour offering of a Kohen that does not require oil. How do you know it's coming to exclude the bread from oil? Maybe it's coming to exclude the voluntary Kohen offering. Mistabra minchas Kohen habalei l'rebuye. It's logical that the minchas Kohanim habalei l'rebuye, that we should really we should include them in requiring oil instead of excluding them. Yeah, we should include them because this first grain offering is more similar to the Kohanic offering and less similar to the bread. To the bread. Why? What are the similarities? So shekain isaron. First of all, it requires a certain measurement, the tenth of an ephah of flour. That's the similar in both of these sacrifices. Kli, it requires a vessel. There's a vessel that's required, but the lechem upanim does not get sanctified in a vessel, so it puts placed in an oven and then on the table. So the other ones are in a vessel, and you need it in a vessel. So chutz, these are all offered. This Kohen sacrifice and the first grain sacrifice is offered on the outer altar. V'tzura, and they both have the prohibition that if you leave it overnight and it loses its form, that's a problem. The bread was left for a week straight. No problem to leave it overnight, and it stayed fresh. But you don't have that prohibition. Hagasha, you got to bring it up to the altar. The bread's already there. Meaning not there. It's on the table, and you don't bring it up to the altar. Ve'ishim is that you offer it up. So these are you don't offer up the bread onto the altar. So there's much more similar to a Kohen offering and much less similar to the bread offering. Therefore, the bread offering, the bread is therefore excluded from oil, requiring oil. Says the Gemara Adrabah, I'll show you the exact opposite. I'll show you similarities between this first grain offering and the bread. Lechem upanim halei l'rebuye. Why? Shekain tzibura. It's communal. This minchas bikurim, this mincha of the first grain, is communal, and the bread that we have there on every week is also brought from communal funds. Tzibura, chova, it's obligatory. The minchas kohanim is a voluntary offering that the Kohen wants to bring. Kamya is that it's these are things that because they're communal, they're sometimes brought even in a state of impurity. You could bring them as a special dispensation that we learn from Pesach, that by communal offerings, they can be brought in a state of impurity. The achil, that the achil is that it's eaten. So part of the mincha offering is eaten, and part of the bread is eaten, as opposed to the minchas kohanim is not eaten. Minchas kohanim, the flour offering brought by the Kohen, is fully consumed on the altar. And pigula, and pigula is only going to apply to those cases, not to the bread. So really, it is more similar. Pigula. Yeah, sorry. Both by this mincha offering and by the bread, there's going to be pigul, because by the bread you have the frankincense that's brought up is a permitter to the bread. Since it's a permitter, it's going to be pigul. But the minchas kohanim, the whole thing is offered on the altar. There's nothing you do to permit the offering to be brought. You just bring it up on the altar. So it has no permitter, therefore it's not going to have pigul. Bishabata, that the Yeah, by the way, this first grain offering is just it's the Omer offering. It's another name for it. Yeah. The Omer offering, you can bring it even on Shabbos. And the bread is obviously laid out and set and reset on Shabbos, as opposed to the voluntary flour offering of the Kohen, which is not brought on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, so you have similarities either way. How do you know at the end of the day to exclude the bread from requiring oil and not excluding the voluntary offering of the Kohanim from oil? They're both similar. So we say no, because mistabra, because it says nefesh, a soul, a person. So they're both requiring to be brought by a person. The Omer is because it says by the Minchas Kohanim that it says their nefesh. That basically it says their nefesh. The voluntary offering of the Kohen, it says nefesh, and therefore we learn that every individual flour offering requires oil. So it says v'nefesh kisakriv korban mincha la'Hashem. It says solas yeh korbano v'yatzek la'shemen. The verse that tells us that you need to put oil starts off with v'nefesh, any soul. So that teaches you that basically any soul, anybody that offers up their own flour offering will require oil, require shemen. The bread is not something which is offered up by an individual, and therefore it's going to be excluded. Yeah. Okay. Mincha. 1 minute. Mincha l'rabos, mincha shmini l'lavona. It says, we learned earlier that mincha, that extra word in the verse, tells us that we're going to include that on the 8th day, the inauguration of the tabernacle, we're going to include that flour offering to require frankincense. Maybe it's going to exclude it from frankincense. Haina means to include. Maybe it means to exclude. So it says, Zamara, Haimai. Well, let's see. Iyamers bishlam rabos shapir. You want to include it, that makes a lot of sense. That right now it does not require frankincense, and now you want it to require frankincense. That's good. If you want to exclude it, so one sec, why would frankincense be included? We have a rule that sha'amidoros layalfina. We don't learn out temporary offerings from permanent offerings. So why would you think that temporary one-time event would require frankincense to then require a verse exclude it? That doesn't make sense. That was a temporary offering. And we wouldn't base it or pattern it off after permanent offerings. So it's more logical to include it than to exclude it. Okay, we'll stop.